film is dedicated to the memory of Dr. Benedict Zaguli Maglakelidze and the history of creation of the medication Camelyn. Film is based on archive documents and scientific publications. Camelyn, the road to life. Nature, which seems to exist materially around us, points to the intangible essence of things with ambiguous mysteries. The secret of our vital energy and vitality is the culture of relationship with nature, culture revealed in both life and art. The answer to the question of philosophers, which is more important, the beauty of nature or the beauty of art, is not sought. The book De Agri Cultura by the ancient Roman author Marcus Porcius Cato describes the relationship with plants and nature in general. The word culture refers to a creative attitude towards the world, when a person creates a new world, new discoveries, and himself on the basis of old experiences. From the monograph of Dr. Benedict Maglakelidze, the healing properties of honey have been known since ancient times. Honey treatment methods of our ancestors are preserved in old healing books and folk tales. Missionary Arcangelo Lamberti, who traveled to Georgia, in particular to Samegrelo, in his novel Description of Colcheti, devotes a large place to Colchian honey. From my experience, I can say that the best honey in the world is Colchian, because ordinary honey here meets all the requirements for the best quality honey. Apart from ordinary honey, other types of honey are also found here, the like of which is found nowhere else but in Colcheti and its neighboring countries. Dr. Maglakelidze, perhaps because he was an artist before he became a doctor and creatively looked at the world through the eyes of an artist, discovered new elements necessary for human vital energy in the bosom of ordinary and already traditionally existing nature. From honey, he created a unique medication, Camelyn, which saved many lives. Back then, it was a completely unexpected, sensational event, which was responded to by professional circles. Serious medical findings based on clinical experiments were voiced. And of course, as it often happens with successful discoveries, both opponents and deniers appeared. But the results were so obvious that nothing could prevent public recognition. After the sudden death of Dr. Maglakelidze, production of Camelyn had stopped. Experiments and feedbacks also stopped. It seemed that the medical world forgot about it. About 30 years have passed, and in an unexpected circumstance, at a new and already completely different times, Camelyn's life begins.
A TV journalist comes to my mother and says, "We heard that such a medication exists, and I would like to interview you, if it's possible." My mother refused at first, said she didn't want it, but after some time she came back and persuaded her. The medication Camelyn, which could have caused the world sensation, has not been produced for 29 years. However, in the 60s and 70s, the medication almost defeated a significant portion of malignant oncological diseases. This is an anti-cancer medication. It destroys tumor cells in experiments, results in necrosis of tumor cells. Next morning, we didn't know what to do. Where to go? People rushed to us. Everybody was asking for the medication.
TV station called us and asked if they could give our phone number to people. We agreed, and thousands of people came to our house. Georgia of the 90s. Political and economic collapse, lack of health policy. In this intolerable environment, the medication Camelyn became the last hope and chance of recovery for many seriously ill people and their families. Ketino and I did not sleep for a week. We did not eat. People were coming all day. The cameras were installed in our workshops. Cameras were installed and recorded everything.
Yes, we know how to make the medicine, but we do not have medicine. We're not producing it for patients. We collected these old materials and started relaunching production. As a result, Camelyn was actually born again. Medication production resumed.
Exalted words are inappropriate in these circumstances. But the fact is, a choice was made. It was impossible for them to not make under the consideration people who were left in despair. And in this very difficult time, Dr. Zaguli Maghlakelidze's daughter, along with her family, refused the financial stability that they had achieved through their art and painting. They declined the planned exhibitions in the United States, as well as the offers of selling their paintings and start producing the medication Camelyn with uncertain perspectives and try to establish its future. March 24, 1954, Moscow. Nikolai Blokin, director of the Institute for Experimental Research in Cancer Pathology and Therapy of the Soviet Academy of Medical Sciences, addresses the Minister of Health of the Soviet Socialist Republic of Georgia. He notes that the Institute is interested and ready to investigate and study, notes that the Institute expresses interest and readiness to investigate and study the therapeutic effects of Dr. Benedict Maghlakelidze's medication on cancer cells. Conducting specific studies requires an adequate amount of medication, notes academician Blokin. The effectiveness of the medication on patients will be tested at the Institute of the Academy of Medicine. Before starting experiments on patients, it is necessary to check the pharmacological properties of the medication Camelyn. Institute asks you to allow Comrade Maghlakelidze to prepare the needed amount of medication for us. Corresponding member of the Academy of Medical Science of the Soviet Union, Professor Nikolai Blokin. And in the 50s of the last century, invention of Dr. Benedict Zaguli Maghlakelidze, the medication Camelyn, which along with having immunological effects also treated successfully many cases of malignant tumors, becomes a kind of a challenge for the medical world. Is it possible to defeat the world's incurable disease? Georgian Dr. Maghlakelidze, completely alone, despite all the resistance, continues to work hard on the medication.
Camelyn was effective against rabies and Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The next step was to try it on tumor. Tests were made to see if it was antibacterial, and they proved that it was. Then they wanted to see if it had antiviral properties, and it was proved as well. This was happening in 50s. After getting these results, medical society, under the leadership of a famous academician, Konstantin Aristavi, became very interested. He noted that since the medication had antiviral properties, and since some tumors have viral origin, maybe it was worth to see if Camelyn had anti-cancer properties. It was proved in Georgia that it indeed has them.
Feedback. Academician Konstantin Aristavi. Studies confirm the anti-cancer properties of the medication Camelyn and allow the author to build a working hypothesis around the mechanism of action of the medication. Of great interest are clinical cases in which the chemotherapeutic effect of the medication in cases of various tumors are convincingly shown. Of course, treatment with Camelyn does not completely cure all cases, but this result still should be considered to be an important achievement and should not leave indifferent any researcher who has dedicated their work to fighting against cancer. The above material does not raise any doubts about the therapeutic effect of Camelyn in case of cancer. Konstantin Aristavi, director of the Experimental and Surgery Scientific Research Institute of the Ministry of Health, academician of the Georgian Academy of Sciences. Personal registration sheet. Maglakelidze Benedict, son of Sardion. Year, month, and date of birth, April 18th, 1906. Place of birth, Zugdidi. Nationality, Georgian. Party membership, no party member.
This happened soon after the war. They had no conditions, no medications. That's why my father started to think about how to help the patients after surgeries. By the time, antibiotics already existed in the world, but were not available in the country. There was hardship, and they had no medicines. Father began to treat wounds with honey as an antiseptic. He had one very serious case. The patient had his ankle shot with a hunting rifle. Due to the lack of medication, my father once again had to pour honey into the wound as an antiseptic and cover it with a bandage. He observed it for a few days and saw that the wound was filled with healthy tissues. The patient no longer needed a leg amputation and survived. This was a very serious example. From this very moment, my father started experiments to get a medication from honey that would get into the bloodstream.
Observations on the patient's history. The patient was admitted on December 29, 1961, due to the presence of a tumor in the abdominal cavity. Patient's condition is serious upon admission. Examination showed dense tumor of the size of a goose egg. X-ray shows the fact of filling in the appendix. Treatment with medication was started on December 29. After a month of treatment, the patient became well. Examinations no longer showed the tumor. X-ray was negative. 7 years have passed. The patient is fine. Patient Vidze, 33-year-old. Diagnosis: right shin tumor. Post-morphological diagnosis: fibrosarcoma. The patient complained of pain in his right shin. After the received trauma, a second tumor appeared. Tumor started to grow and reached the size of an orange. Tumor resection was performed, and the patient was discharged in good condition. 1 month after the surgery, the patient's condition worsened. The tumor recurred. The patient decided to start treatment with Camelyn. New examination showed that tumor started to metastasize and patient was in pain. Treatment with Camelyn was started. After the first course of treatment, the neoplastic growth of the shin was undetectable. The tumor in the middle third of the thigh was reducing in size. Most of the tumor nodules in the groin area have disappeared. After the second course of treatment, the tumor was no longer found anywhere. 7 years have passed. The patient is healthy.
We were one of the republics then. It was not that easy to make such a statement and say that in your republic, the medicine obtained from honey kills the tumor cell. That's what anti-cancer really means. It had to be approved in Moscow too. They should draw the same conclusions. The Federal Pharmaceutical Committee allowed to conduct experiments on animals. The next stage was the trials on the most seriously ill patients who had only a couple of days left.
One of the qualities of Camelyn is an analgesic. Unfortunately, I needed it because my wife was sick. She had a malignant tumor on the breast. 15 years after the surgery, she had no problems, but then the disease broke out at once. As you might know, cancer comes with very strong pains, and doctors use thousands of different medications against it. I used Camelyn at this very point, and it practically completely relieved the pain. It's true this did not save her, but my wife died without pain or suffering. I have very good and positive impression of this medicine since then. We studied the effect of Camelyn on immune system during various pathologies, especially during burns, in dentistry, during periodontitis. But initially we used healthy volunteers for tests. The first experiments were conducted on them. We found out that it activates the immune system in healthy body, improves immune response. And if the immune system is suppressed, even if it is badly suppressed, Camelyn quickly and dynamically brings it back to normal condition. We must know that Camelyn is a very serious immunomodulator. Immunomodulators play a huge part in today's medicine. It is also an antioxidant and has a very strong antimicrobial action in addition. Camelyn is characterized by a very high antioxidant activity. In living organisms, redox reactions are activated in process of life. Meanwhile, reactive forms of oxygen are produced, which are involved in free radical oxidation reactions and lead to dysfunction of cells and tissues of the body, the development of oncological diseases. Antioxidants belong to the class of biologically active substances that bind excess free radicals and protect the body from the occurrence of dangerous diseases. Our immune system participates in any pathology. After proving that Camelyn affects our immune system very positively, we concluded that Camelyn acts on the underlying disease through immunostimulation, immunomodulation, immunocorrection.
My mother became very ill. Diagnosis: lymphogranulomatosis. The situation was gradually worsening catastrophically. I informed my brother, who worked as a doctor in the north. After his detention, he stayed there and was not allowed to leave. He was even deprived of the right to vote for 5 years. He became the chief physician of the polyclinic, the head of the health department, the chief therapist of the Komi Autonomous Republic. He was all of that. After receiving my telegram, he was forced to temporarily arrive to Tbilisi. As a physician with a great practice, he suspected that the focus of the disease might have been in the spleen. Since he couldn't reach agreement with doctors about the treatment, my brother took my mom, who was in a very serious condition, home. She could die any day. My brother visited Zaguli Maglakelidze, but he refused to give the medicine. The reason was that my uncle, from my mother's side, an academician, pathologist Vladimir Shkenti, was the deputy rector of the medical institute in the field of medicine and the chairman of the scientific council at the time. We found out that someone filed a complaint to the scientific council against Zaguli, that he was using some medication on patients, and their condition was worsening because of the medication. As a result, Vladimir Shkenti summoned Zaguli and categorically forbade him to conduct experiments on people. That's when my brother visited Maglakelidze for the medication. Zaguli replied, "I have a great respect for you, but I can't give you the medication because the patient may die soon. And if your uncle finds out, they will definitely blame my medication." Although in few days, my brother persuaded Zaguli and he gave Amiron some light beige solution in a little bottle. After a few days of injections, we noticed that the life started coming back to patient. Amiron once again went to Zaguli. Zaguli told that previous solution was very weak and gave him strong solution this time. After 5 or 6 days of treatment, hemoglobin level reached a norm. By this time, our uncle already coped with the idea that his sister would die. He was astonished to see that his half-dead patient was coming back to life. Uncle Vladimir didn't know that we were treating Mother with Zaguli's medication. But when Mother was finally standing on her feet again, we told him about the reasons of her recovery. Shkenti summoned Zaguli once again and told him that he should immediately present his work to the scientific council.
Brother of Rukaya Morchiladze, Amiran Morchiladze, and writer Chabua Amirejibi, both members of the organization Tetri Georgi, were sentenced to many years in exile for anti-Soviet activities.
When Khrushchev announced amnesty, Chabua returned home. He seemed to be fine at first, but then Chabua was suddenly diagnosed with a throat tumor. It caused a huge resonance. A very famous healer told him that surgery could help him live 3 more years. Otherwise, he had only 3 months left. Chabua refused surgery and said that he didn't want to be a disabled person for 3 years. He would rather have months of manly life. Amiran Morchiladze heard this story and arrived to Tbilisi to take Chabua to Gerson Institute in Moscow, where he was treated with radiation. This is a very difficult treatment. This was the period when Dr. Zaguli Maglakelidze worked on Camelyn very intensively. He told Amiran that the medication was ready and offered to use it to treat his brother Chabua. They were so close, they called each other brothers. Amiran took the solution and started injections. He left his job for 3 months to be with Chabua and treat him with Camelyn. It gave fantastic results. It was a miracle. Very fast, Chabua's health went back to normal, and he was fully recovered when he came back to Tbilisi. Chabua was completely healed by the time. He used to tell everyone that Zaguli gave him another life. My father's real name was Benedicte, but everyone called him Zaguli. From the time to time, we used Camelyn from prevention. To be honest, I'm deeply convinced that it was because of Camelyn that Chabua lived until 93.
Protocols and reports of the meetings organized in the Ministry of Health of Soviet Socialist Republic of Georgia. Supporters and opponents. Doubt, skepticism, recognition. Dr. Maglakelidze has been forced to explain and protect his medication so many times.
I still remember this story very well. All the hematologists, oncologists, all the best doctors of Tbilisi attended the meeting of the Scientific Council. Zaguli made a speech and then brought in the patients. I remember him bringing in the boy, who turned out to have been born with a congenital tumor above the ear. The child, who was a 1.5-year-old, had several surgeries. He had orange-sided sarcoma on his brain. After each surgery, the sarcoma soon grew again. It was reaching the size in a month. As the baby grew, so did the sarcoma. For the fourth time, doctors refused to perform surgery. They said it would make no sense. Doctors said they couldn't do anything else. We can't cut off the baby's head, they said. So this was the child who Zaguli brought in after the treatment. And do you know how he treated the baby? Frightened himself, he would mix the camelin powder into the mother's milk and feed the baby with it. And the tumor started to reduce in size. Clinical studies and observations confirmed that after 3-week treatment, the child could already see. He had problems with vision before because the tumor was growing in brain and causing problems with vision. He couldn't walk. Eventually, the child started to walk and was completely healed.
May 25, 1962. After hearing the report, academician Zhrendi noted that Maglakelidze had treated many patients and most of the cases have been a subject to detailed study. The case of child sarcoma is something unique. I have never seen anything like this.
It was published in the newspaper next day with the headline, "An anti-cancer medication will be released in Georgia." My whole family and parents were very happy because they had real results. People survived. Although the results could not be same for everyone, of course. This does not happen in nature. In case of any disease, Having equally good results with all patients is impossible.
11 patients with cancer and 5 patients with sarcoma were treated within 5 months, all with advanced disease. 4 patients with cancer were clinically cured. 4 patients were discharged in improved condition. 1 patient in unchanged condition. 2 patients died. In the case of sarcoma, 4 out of 5 patients were clinically cured.
The story of singer Otto Ramishvili is as follows. He had a tumor on his throat and was going to have a surgery. Once he met my uncle Nias Maglakelidze and told him that he was going to have a surgery. My uncle told him, "Stop thinking about surgery. I will give you the medicine now, and you will have injections and everything will be fine." Ramishvili started the treatment and he remained a Camelyn user all his life. Camelyn helped him to recover and surgery was not required anymore. He maintained his voice until last day. Otto Ramishvili was extremely grateful to Camelyn. We even recorded an interview while he was with us.
This Camelyn is the greatest medication. I'm so grateful and happy. I had a few injections which saved me, so that I didn't need throat surgery anymore. I've never seen anything like this in my life. My song, Be Like a Pharmacist, is dedicated to Camelyn and belongs to this medication. Bee as pharmacist prepares medicine for us from flowers. I give my heart to the bee buzzing. My heart is warmed by the light of tunes. The bee flies between me and the sun like a small ambassador of life. There is only honey in this drug. Honey and Zaguli's technology. Large amounts of honey are needed to produce this medication. It should be natural, ecologically clean honey. It's very important that such honey is produced in Georgia. This is a Georgian mountain honey with very high quality. Georgian honey has an exceptional quality because Georgian bees have longer trunks. That's why Georgian honey is known for its more biologically active elements. 1955. At the meeting of the Presidium of Scientific Council of the Ministry of Health, Dr. Maglakelidze's report on his treatment with honey was heard. Decided to continue the study of the honey medication provided by Dr. Maglakelidze. Dr. Maglakelidze is required to submit to the Scientific Council written description of the method and technology of making the medication from honey. Minister of Health of the Georgian SSR, Comrade Mamam Tavrishvili, should be asked to conduct the study of Dr. Maglakelidze's medication in necessary conditions. The medication Camelyn is absolutely hypoallergenic, does not cause allergies at all. I emphasize this because honey is an allergenic food for many people. Since the medication is derived from honey, this question is often asked. But all the substances and elements which cause allergy in honey are eliminated in this medication. Thus, it is practically non-allergic. The medication contains more than 60 biologically active substances and elements. This combination together does the job. According to the conclusion of the Commission of Leningrad Institute of Oncology, the test medication suppresses the tumor and inhibits its growth. Tumor cell necrosis occurs. In this period, Dr. Mavlakelidze's medication M1 gained recognition in the leading scientific institutes of Moscow and Leningrad. The healing properties of the medication are recognized by the most authoritative specialists in clinical and experimental oncology, academicians Leonid Shabat, Mikhail Maevsky, Nikolai Blokin. In 1964, the Scientific Pharmacological Committee of the Ministry of Health of the Soviet Union named the medication Camelyn. 1964, addressed to the director of the Blood Transfusion Institute of Georgia's Comrade Agnatashvili, quote, "Based on the resolution of the Ministry of Health of the Soviet Union, it is necessary to systematically supply the medication Camelyn to the following scientific and medical institutions: Institute of Experimental and Clinical Oncology of the Soviet Union, Institute of Oncology, Moscow 62nd City Hospital, Gersten Institute of Oncology, Professor Osipov Clinic in Moscow, Leningrad Institute of Oncology, X-ray and Radiology Institute of Leningrad, Zelenogorsky Hospital in Leningrad, Professor Chargayishvili Clinic of Otorhinolaryngology in Tbilisi, Professor Todadze Clinic in Tbilisi, Professor Ustiashvili Gynecological Clinic in Tbilisi, Soviet Union Institute of Experimental Surgery and Hematology, Experimental Department of the Institute of Oncology of the Soviet Socialist Republic of Georgia.
Demand from Russia was huge then. They needed, say, 1.5 million impulses. Moscow was asking to send. Leningrad demands. Ukraine was demanding too. Orders were sent to Georgia to make the medication for different republics of the Soviet Union.
At this time, some people in Tbilisi openly declared war against Dr. Mavlakelidze. They tried to undermine his authority in every possible way. The management of the Tbilisi Oncology Hospital sued his colleague, Dr. Mavlakelidze. Some oncologists loudly suggest Mavlakelidze probably mixes morphine in the medication and therefore patients no longer feel pain. Dr. Mavlakelidze responded with a bitter smile. "My family sometimes has no money for bread. How could I get so much morphine?"
Despite all the disruptions, like false letters were appearing saying they haven't received the product yet, things were moving forward, slowly but still moving.
Few years earlier, the effectiveness of the medication Camelyn was monitored by a special commission in the laboratory of the Leningrad Oncology Institute. The experiment was carried out in secret. Dr. Mavlakelidze arrived in the city of Peter to acknowledge Camelyn with his friends and colleagues whom he thought he could trust. He never liked the expression that enemies can become your friends while friends can become enemies. He, a caring doctor, a famous tamada, a loyal friend, simply did not believe it was possible. And suddenly, here in Leningrad, waiting for the conclusion of specialists and scientists, a time came when he couldn't share the reason of his anxiety with anyone. Therefore, he wrote everything down in his diary, excerpts from the diary. How much suffering, how many emotions. I work day and night. I do not know what lies ahead. He feels being chased, controlled. One of his colleagues is obviously interested in thwarting an experiment conducted on mice. In the first days of injections, I saw him pouring paint on mouse instead of alcohol before making injections. He said it was a powerful antiseptic substance. Then on the same day, he started mixing the same paint into the ampules. To be short, that man was a serpent. I'm going to bed to forget this thought. I feel like these thoughts will drive me crazy. I've never seen such a disgusting, such a subversive betrayal from a Georgian person. I try not to react. I decided to hold it in until I have the final results. Meaning, I needed to behave as an actor. I must act. I see he places his medication in the corner. Says it is a catalyst to strengthen the medication. But he was holding a colorless liquid in his hand, which has no effect. Later, I secretly took one of those ampoules. I went out, put a drop of the liquid on my hand, and became even more convinced of what I was thinking. On the next day, Dr. Maglakelidze was in the restaurant Kafkaz and, oppressed, barely containing himself, was listening to his traitor colleague talking about morality and honesty. I stood up. I could no longer bear watching this immoral man and told I felt sleepy. I lay down in my room, thinking about my children, my little Ketino, Nias and Zia. I am afraid that I will not be able to bear it and will attack the scoundrel professor. I avoid these people who have helped me a lot. They are all academicians. I decided to be patient until a time, and that time, that day, will also be included in my diary. From the family album of Benedicte, also known as Zaguli Maglakelidze. Mother, Olga Kvaraya. Father, Sardio Maglakelidze, forest engineer. He would bring rare plants crops to Samegrelo from abroad. Decorated the garden of Zugdidi Dadiani Palace. Zaguli Maglakelidze, who had a rare singing voice and artistry, at the age of 12 was introduced to Vano Sarajishvili, who was on tour in Zugdidi. The child modestly stood on the stage and sang for his favorite singer a song from his repertoire. People of Samegrelo would recall it for years, how enthusiastically Maestro addressed the public. "This boy will soon make you forget me," he said. Zaguli was admitted in the conservatory of the recommendation of Vano Sarajishvili. For 3 years, the young tenor sang arias in the operas, Carmen, Aida, the Queen of Spades, Huguenots. After 3 years of conservatory, he changed profession, and in his service record, in the personal record sheet, the entry appeared, Assistant Director, Screenwriter. Shortly afterwards, he became a director of the animation studio in Sakhkin Bretsby. In 1930, Georgian Cartoon Workshop was created. The first cartoons were coming out. Lado Gudiashvili, Georgian artist who was not in favor of officials, was invited to work on the cartoon Argonauts. Zaguli Maglakelidze thought it would help him to overcome his depression. In 1935, Argonauts successfully premiered. Zaguli was also invited in radio committee. He recited Kvareli Mountains by Ilya Chavchavadze and Sergo Zakariadze, master of reciting. Loved it. But again, an unexpected entry in his autobiography. In 1936, I entered the Medical Institute. At the same time, I wrote a play based on works of Vazov Shavela. It was planned to make a film adaptation. The screenplay was approved by the Cinematography Committee. But then the World War II began. At the beginning of the war in 1941, I was appointed as a resident doctor at the hospital N1287 in Avlabari, on Shaumiani Street. The wounded were brought to the hospital directly from the front, evacuated from different cities. The most difficult surgeries were carried out. Soon Dr. Maglakhelidze voluntarily left for the front line, together with his colleague Dr. Gujuji Kartozia. He was in the Crimea, on the Kirk Peninsula. The fighting took place very close to the medical point. Dr. Gujuji Kartozia is deadly wounded, and they cannot save him. Surgeries are performed almost on the front line. One more excerpt from the autobiography. Situation changes quickly. The Kirk Peninsula is occupied by the Germans. Soon the Soviet troops return to their starting positions with selfless battles. In May of the same year, the Germans again conquered Kirk. By then, the chief doctor of the Rifle Legion did not yet know that his brother, Valiko Maglakhelidze, had been captured by the Germans here in Kirk. The family drama did not begin in the World War II. Before that, back in 1924, another brother of the Maglakelidzes, Shaliko Maglakhelidze, emigrated with the commander-in-chief of the Georgian National Army and became a member at the anti-Soviet organization Tetri Georgi.
My father had 4 brothers. There were 5 of them. One brother, Bukhuti, was an engineer, but later he graduated from the Theatrical Institute and was a director. Then was Shalva Maglakhelidze, who went to France after the defeat of the 1924 uprising. Later his parents were punished instead of him in 1937. The next brother was Valiko Maglakhelidze, who was captured by the Germans during World War II. But luckily, he met his brother Shalva, who had immigrated. Shalva took care of him and saved him from the captivity. I don't know how, but he did. When the war ended, Valiko moved to Argentina, but my dad thought that they were missing.
Crimea, Kirk. During the mass bombing, Dr. Zaguli Maglakhelidze covered a wounded soldier with his own body and was severely wounded by a German machine gun. From the autobiography. In March 1942, I received a fracture on my left shoulder bone on the Crimean front. I was evacuated to the evacuation hospital in Kislovodsk. In August 1942, after recovery, I returned to Tbilisi. There, once again, I was appointed as the head of the surgical department of Shaumiani Street, Avlabari, Hospital 1247.
Guguli Abashidze, daughter of Haidar Abashidze and Margarita Tsereteli, a medical institute student, recalls that she was appointed at the hospital on Shaumiani Street. This was the first time when I saw so many wounded, so much blood. I was standing at the end of the corridor when Dr. Maglakhelidze came down and stopped in front of me. It was hard to say how it happened, or whether it really happens to fall in love at first sight. This is how it was. A handsome man was standing in front of me. He was talking to me and taking me from the hospital environment to somewhere else. I felt something unusual, and for some reason my eyes filled with tears. I quickly left the place. Later I saw this man again, how he sang, how he danced. At the same time, he was incomparable as a doctor. All his colleagues praised him all the time.
As soon as I saw her, I told myself, this is who I should be with forever. I have fulfilled everything I dreamed of in life. That too will be fulfilled. In the family of Haidar Abashidze on Vashlovani Street in Tbilisi, their already son-in-law Zaguli Maglakhelidze is meeting Georgian public figures. Haidar Abashidze, Member of Parliament of Independent Georgia, representative of the Development Committee of Muslim Georgia, participant of the Trabzon Peace Conference. National ideas are born and revived here. as well as the pain that the members of the Maglakelidze family were sacrificed to. Our doctor is here, Ektimet Hakaishvili would say when he saw Dzaguli Maglakelidze. Dzaguli was with Ektimet Hakaishvili even when the great scientist was placed under domestic arrest by the Soviet Special Services. Dzaguli Maglakelidze took part in a little ceremony of Ektimet's funerals, along with just few other people.
Dzaguli
Maglakelidze was a seeker by nature. In science, in art, in relationships with people, he was always looking for something that could help others, could help to at least prolong their physical existence. Despite of many obstacles, Dr. Maglakelidze managed to achieve the main goal of his life. He published the first scientific monograph about the defeat of deadly disease.
Another monograph was supposed to be published, but he died suddenly in December of 1974. His death stopped the production of the medication. Mom and Dad were such a loving couple. It was impossible to imagine them separately. They walked together, breathed together, had mutual friends. Existing separately seemed impossible for them. My mother went through such emotions. I can't continue this work, she said. Author of the medication was no longer with us. Mother found herself in a very difficult situation. She had lost the most important person, a friend. Dzaguli was not just a husband for her. Therefore, working on Camelyn had stopped. It was actually locked in the drawer and forgotten.
Historical reality. Something ends because something else is going to start. State borders were opened. In the Soviet period, every new scientific product was to be registered in the capital of Russia. But in this new reality, it is desirable to receive recognition from West. Family of Camelyn Maglakelidze and Avtandil Makharolidze travels to the United States to survive physically and save their art.
In 1989, I found myself in America. After that, my first American exhibition was held that year. Only ours. Lela was too young then. Trinity Gallery signed a contract with us. We worked with them for several years.
We came back to Georgia a little later, but then had to travel back to the United States again. It was a time when we had to go abroad through Moscow. We left, and it turned out to be the last flight of this route. Soon the war began in Tbilisi, a civil war.
Good evening. A week of fighting that's turned the center of the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, into a battleground ended this afternoon with tentative agreement on a ceasefire. 51 people are reported to have been killed and 283 injured.
This was the period when the flag of the Soviet Union was taken down in Moscow. We witnessed this historic day. We lived a normal life in Tbilisi in the 90s, like everyone else. We were flying to US periodically and then coming back. The whole family worked 24 hours a day. We were drawing, creating. Sometimes foreigners would come and buy our works. That's how we were earning our living. One day, a new art manager called on the phone and told they wanted to meet us.
Our art managers were extraordinary people. Leon Weinstein and his wife Julia Gurganidze Weinstein, who is of Georgian origin. Both are particularly good people.
Weinstein Art
Management is our company. We try to attract the best artists from all over the world to the United States. We choose artists carefully, and once my wife, who is also my business partner, accidentally saw a wonderful painting on the internet and liked it very much. It turned out that the painting belonged to Georgian artist Avtandil Makharoblidze. Finding this artist was not difficult for us, because I'll tell you secretly, my wife is half Georgian.
Talented people are talented in everything. I was very lucky to see Avtandil's painting on one of the websites in 2000. I immediately decided that I should definitely meet the author of this piece of art.
To be short, in 2001, they found themselves with us, Avtandil, his wife, and their wonderful daughter Lela. They brought some of their work with them. We presented their paintings to the American market. We immediately received an offer to sign a contract with them. We, as managers, have prepared this contract. We all signed it and were given an advance payment. As soon as the Americans saw Lela's work, they signed the contract immediately, without saying a word.
Avtandil perfectly adapted to the topic they liked. He started drawing American nightlife of the 1930s for them, and was very popular.
Like the fragrance of blossoms fair.
The publishing house then printed numerous copies of these works without any notice. The advertising campaign yielded great results. You could see magazines with reproductions of Avtandil's paintings everywhere. Stunned people asked us where we found this person. Red color has come into vogue. I was in the top 5 best-selling artists. This is a big industry, a big art business. I do not claim to be the best, but I was one of the best-selling artists in America. Sometimes I was 3rd, sometimes 5th, sometimes the 2nd. Every year, Art Expo was held in New York, and our works were exhibited in the central place. Art Expo New York lasts for 4 days, and 30,000 to 40,000 people from all over America attended. Half of them are professionals, gallery owners, business people, artists. Half of them are just buyers. All the paintings of these 3 of our artists were purchased. Generally, when it is sold, you do not immediately take the painting home. It is marked with a red dot as a property. This is how the works of all 3 artists were marked. All the copies were also sold out. Overwhelmed people would come and ask us, where did we find such artists? We would answer, in Georgia, of course.
They entered our lives and gained the love of the American public. They became recognized and very well-selling artists. They've set new goals for themselves. The goal was to cure people from terrible diseases.
After such a great success, they found themselves in front of dilemma. This doesn't seem to be unexpected. Genetic biography of this family continues. Art or the struggle to save human lives. When the subject of Camelyn was raised, I've put everything, my success in art, I've put everything aside because Camelyn could not be betrayed.
With a clinical and morphological diagnosis, after the diagnosis of the malignant tumor, patients are prescribed treatment with the medication Camelyn to prepare for surgery. But as soon as the condition improves, they refuse surgery and are discharged. In all the case of advanced forms of the disease, the condition was improving, especially when the problems were with the blood, anemia, or anything else. Blood pathology in general was changing for the better.
When a person has a child who is sick and expecting a tragedy, that's when they were coming to us. Ketino and I would very often burst into tears. It is very difficult for an artist to hear and see all this. We decided to do our best for this work. We decided to use all the money we earned through our successful art business abroad to found this company. Whatever was needed to register the medication under Georgian law, everything was done from scratch. Preclinical studies were conducted, studies on toxicity, allergies, then clinical studies. It is a very time-consuming and energy-consuming job, but everything went well. Thanks to the help of our pharmacist, Tamas Murtazashvili, we prepared everything properly. Recordings, doses. He's a man of science and is the best in everything he does. Eventually, we brought these 5 forms of medicine to a really high level. Ms. Ketino and Mr. Afto found all the necessary documents, archived materials, where there are real facts described. They also include results of the tests on animals and humans. I also helped them to prepare the documents to register the medication in the regulation agency of the Ministry of Health and the Pharmaceutical Service. There were difficulties. They demanded us to have a manufacturing. We needed to get a license for it, and the building was needed. All of that required large financial resources. We did not take a loan, and no one helped us. We used all our saving for it. We bought a building for the manufacturing. We bought German and Italian machines of the highest standards, GMP standard. We started production and entered the market. This is not an easy task. Yes, we had a medication and technology left by the person who invented it, but we needed to create different forms of this medication, ampules, capsules. It was absolutely necessary. There are 5 forms of the medication Camelyn currently. Camelyn M1, injection form. Camelyn M2, capsules, used as an immunomodulator in complex therapy. It's very effective against bacterial and fungal infections in terms of reducing the side effects caused by chemotherapy in the treatment of urological diseases, tumors, osteoarthritis, osteochondrosis of the spine, degenerative dystrophic diseases of the joints, polyneuropathy, post-operative. Camelyn M3 ointment, effective for purulent and long-term wounds of the skin and soft tissues, trophic ulcers, whitlow, bed sores, also in rheumatic diseases of the joints, osteoarthritis and osteochondrosis of the spine. Camelyn M4, suppositories, effective against vaginal infections including bacterial, viral, fungal genesis. Spray, effective in infections in the mouth and throat. Pharyngitis, laryngitis, catarrhal angina, stomatitis, ulcerative gingivitis. There is no period when there are no new researchers conducted on this medication. Another study has just been completed. We are going to release a new form of Camelyn, eye drops. We conducted a preclinical study on the basis of the Ivane Beritashvili Institute of Physiology. The study was led by academician Nodar Mitagvaria. Preclinical research has shown very good results. When we talk about the Camelyn eye drops that were brought to us for testing, the method of the experiment was to take the animal with so-called eye uveitis, or inflammation. It can get in person's eye through infectious or bacteria and from the same problem. Look, this is the eye of a sick rabbit. Do you see in what condition the blood vessels are? Now look at the same eye after Camelyn treatment. Do you see a fundamental difference? Do you see how the blood vessels are cleansed? See here, blood circulation is actually very obstructed, and here it has returned to normal. When we have blood vessels in this condition because of uveitis, it is already impossible to talk about the norm. But if we restore the blood supply and return it to normal, everything will be cleared. This is what we get with Camelyn eye drops. The company Camelyn, together with Tbilisi Medical University, had the idea to establish a Benedictine Maglagelidze scholarship at Tbilisi State Medical University. The scholarship is awarded to the successful student who has the highest grade in the subject of immunology. I have 2 doctoral students now. Their experiments, which are done in frames of this program, are fully funded by the Camelyn Company. This is a real humanitarian aid, we can say. In addition, it is important to know how Camelyn's authors approach the case. They study the properties of the medication in the world's leading clinics and medical centers in the first place. Properties of Camelyn have been studied in Europe, United States, Canada, India, Mexico, and even Brazil. Very serious research has been conducted on Camelyn. First, it happened in Canada at the University of Quebec, where the properties of Camelyn as an immunomodulator were studied. It was found to be a very strong antibacterial, antiviral medication. It has a high antifungal effect. These were modern studies, and we got very high, reliable results. Studies have also been conducted in Brazil. One study was also conducted on the AIDS virus. I mean laboratory studies, of course. Based on research conducted at Stanford University and Boston Women's Hospital, André Pichet, MD, professor of medicine at the University of Quebec, explains, camelin regulates the function of immune cells that protect the body from pathogens. The T-cell-dependent antibody response is an essential factor for successful immune defenses against a number of environmental pathogens. It is at this time that C, D, T, and B lymphocytes are activated to produce cytokines and antibodies, thus ensuring the stability and production of the immune system.
We had a very good employee, the famous scientist Koba Gurielidze, who helped us do researches all over the world. He would send the medication to his colleagues, scientists, biologists, biochemists. We have conclusions received from there. The University of Quebec has concluded it to be one of the strongest immunomodulators in the world.
I read in the works of Mr. Zaguli Benedicte Merlakelidze that he had also tried to test the medication on viruses. No wonder we were intrigued and conducted this study at the Lady Davis Center for AIDS and Hepatitis C in Montreal, led by Professor Mark Wemberg. This is an electron microscope. You can see what the AIDS virus looks like under an electron microscope. On the other side, you see the same virus with camelin added with the concentration 1 to 200. You can see that the virus is oppressed and this area is cleaned. There is bacterium bacillus anthracus placed in these plates here. These white snowflakes are anthrax bacteria. Camelin of various concentrations are then included in this area. You can see that even at low concentrations, the multiplication of bacteria was declined. White snowflakes were reduced, and at higher concentrations, the bacteria almost disappeared. The medical processes that the world immunology is discussing today have been observed in the medication camelin for 80 years. The effects of this medication are really so simple and effective that it is unlikely to have an analog in the world. It is noteworthy that it's completely harmless. No allergic reactions and no cases of complication were recorded for 80 years, which is also a unique result. After the resumption of production, the medication has gained numerous recognitions locally and internationally. In 2014, at the awards ceremony held by the international organization Directions of Business Initiatives in New York, the pharmaceutical company Camelyn was awarded a Gold Summit in the nomination of the Quality Award.
Congratulations to the representatives of Limited Camelyn from Georgia, present here tonight on stage to receive this prestigious award.
We have registered this medication. In Ukraine, the medication was called Camelyn Bio. We have been working on medication development and research for several years now. We are establishing appropriate scientific basis. Our goal is not only to gain trust, but also to explain to people how the medication works, what it consists of, and what are the advantages of the medication in the treatment of different diseases.
Disruption of immune system leads to chronic infections and also, not infrequently, malignant tumors. Cancer cells with an antigenic structure are often identical to healthy cells, and therefore T lymphocytes and macrophages are difficult to defect. Tumor cells dig into nearby tissues and try their best to keep their receptors in intact shape. Camelyn Bio exogenous peptides find intact receptors of cancer cells. T lymphocytes then begin to destroy dangerous cells. Macrophages perform the removing of toxin waste.
There was a time when different people gave me general information about Camelyn, about the success of the medication, for instance, about its position in sales. Some numbers are so on. To be honest, I was not interested in that. I first met Mr. Avtandil and his wonderful wife, Ketevan, at the Camelyn office. These people have dedicated their whole lives to the production of the medication Camelyn, to its revival in our time. Camelyn is a part of their life, their souls. After we got the real clinical results in Ukraine, with our clinical cases, our analysis and description, scientific articles, I want to tell you that working with this medication is a real happiness for a doctor. Why? Because we see real results. The medication works, and this is the most important part. For example, the World Health Organization states that, in fact, up to 75% of medication treatments give no results in case of cancer. Pay attention, 75% of medications do not work. Camelyn works 100% of the time. Justifies all clinical cases. Regardless of the severity of the disease, the medication helps the patient. Yes, this is not a panacea. Yes, we cannot fully cure some diseases, but we can prolong human life. We give the patient the opportunity to feel better. People really do see the results of Camelyn treatment. September 2019, Tbilisi State Medical University, Joint International Conference of Georgian and European Scientists. Green means green technologies for healthy living. Topic: Ecological problems and human health. Scientists are looking for alternative methods of treatment to protect and improve the human immune system. The pharmaceutical company Camelyn also participates in the conference. While different types of new viruses remain an unsolved problem in the modern world, Camelyn finds its own concept: protection from toxic viral infections in the vitality of nature. Maybe the medication Camelyn and similar millennial methods of treatment are not an alternative medicine. Maybe this is the real medicine we need to get back to. Maybe there is no need to invent more complex, expensive, and less effective medications. It is time to return to the experience of millennia, to the point where we all come from.
Do you want me to tell you how old I am? I turned 91 this year. I've been through a lot. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had surgery. After this surgery, I started taking maglacalidase medicine. One course in autumn for a month, and one course in spring. 25 years have passed, and I am absolutely healthy. I take maglacalidase medicine periodically for prevention. I had no infectious diseases in my childhood. Somehow, it didn't happen. We still think that Camelyn is the reason, because my mother used to give me Camelyn with small breaks.
And yet, why was the medication named Camelyn? Gogol Abashidze recalls, when the name of the medication M1 was to be chosen in the Pharmacology Committee of the Ministry of Health of the Soviet Union, Dr. Maghlakelidze did not think much. I'll name it Iveria, or simply M. Maghlakelidze, he said. However, the head of the Pharmacology Committee of the Soviet Union, academician Grigory Pershin, named the medication Camelyn for some reason. No one ever explained why was this name chosen. The ancient Greeks said, anyone who understands names knows things. According to Encyclopedis, one of the flowers of the tea family was named Camellia in honor of the 17th century Czech botanist George Joseph Camel. Botanist Camel, as a missionary, traveled to many parts of the world and eventually settled in the Philippines. He studied flora, sought out medical plants. In the Philippines, he became the first pharmacist. He created a large botanical garden of a variety of medicinal plants, where he prepared medicines and treated the sick. Maybe it was in the missionary rank that they saw the work of Benedicte Dzaguli Maghlakelidze, who, unlike George Joseph Camel, sought and cultivated medicinal plants not in Europe or the Philippines, but in ancient Kolkheti, in Georgia, at the crossroads of Europe and Asia.